In today's brief video, we're going to discuss the top 7 reasons why people smoke weed or consume cannabis products. After discussing each of these reasons, we're going to try and dismantle them to see how valid each of these reasons may be in regard to your relationship with cannabis consumption. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name's Dr. Frank. I'm the founder of AddictionMindset recovery coaching programs, which are dedicated to helping people quit nicotine, THC, energy drinks, and adult media content, substances I once struggled with. To learn more about our one-on-one coaching programs or our supplement products designed to help people quit, be sure to check out the pinned comment or the video description at the end of today's video. Now, I've listed each of these 7 reasons in no particular order, but it's very important as we go throughout today's video that you think of your own reasons as to why it is you continue to consume cannabis if you're in the process of trying to quit. Without identification of the perceived or actual benefits that you get from cannabis consumption, and without being able to rationalize whether those benefits that you either perceive or actually experience apply in your scenario, it makes quitting really, really hard. Because if you're smoking weed and you're getting benefits from it, getting benefits, one, why would you quit? 2, it's going to make quitting be a struggle. But if you're smoking weed and most of the benefits are only that, perceived benefits, quitting becomes easier, okay? So let's talk about it. Reason number 1, as a coping mechanism, right? And I completely understand this. Substances, whether it's cannabis, shopping, pornography, alcohol, nicotine, it doesn't really matter the drug. They're 2 things. They're very fast acting and they have very predictable and very reliable outcomes. You're going to get that high. So when you're in a situation that you feel the need to cope with, presumably a situation that's somewhat unpredictable or a situation that's particularly challenging, reaching for something that's fast acting, reliable, and gives you a predictable outcome actually makes a lot of sense to be used as a coping mechanism. This is why whether it's weed or other drugs are such dependable coping mechanisms for people. So it makes sense. This isn't something that people should fault themselves for or think like, oh, I've picked such a crappy coping mechanism. In theory, you actually picked a coping mechanism that's quite effective and it's easy to do. It requires a really low threshold of effort to use it, right? So it makes sense as a coping mechanism. Now, the problem, though, becomes, are you coping with the consequences and side effects of cannabis substance use disorder or addiction? Because if you're coping with, let's say, anxiety, depression, declining physical health, wasted time and energy and motivation, wasted finances, strained marriages or relationships with your children or your family due to the consequences of substance use, cannabis use, are you now consuming cannabis to cope with the consequences of addiction? Are you using the thing that's the problem and trying to use it as the solution to the problem? Because that would be an ineffective coping mechanism. And then what happens? The thing that maybe once worked has now become ineffective. It's lost some of that dependability and reliability because it's now become the source of the problems. Your frustrations begin to grow. The anxiety grows because now the thing that maybe once worked as a coping mechanism is failing. And now what do? You consume more and more of the drug as your tolerance goes up. Keep in mind, too, the definition of coping is it's a method of dealing successfully with problems. Is cannabis helping you successfully deal with your problems, whether they be business problems, relationship problems, financial problems, physical health problems? Yes or no? Okay, the next reason why a lot of people consume weed or smoke weed is for the novelty of it. This is typically early on in the weed consumption experience. It's new. It's something that's exciting, and anything that's new or exciting gives us that rush of dopamine, and then we get even more dopamine reinforced when we consume the substance. The issue here that arises is for most people, once they fall into the realm of addiction or substance abuse, there's no more novelty in it, right? It's the same thing day in and day out, and it becomes very, very mundane. And what winds up happening is this predictability actually becomes very, very, very boring. And then what? People say, well, I'm smoking to escape the boredom, to cope with the boredom. Well, did the predictability in drug use and the same thing day in and day out, the thing that once gave you a novel experience that's no longer new, no longer novel, has that become boring? And once again, are you using the substance, cannabis, to cope with the boredom, a situation that it's put you in? Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about boredom when I go through these reasons. Really, though, reason number 2 was novelty. It's a new experience, but I would question you, is your cannabis consumption actually preventing you from the pursuit of new experiences at this point, right? Because when addiction really kind of takes a hold, when that choice to consume a drug takes a hold of us, we tend to put all those other new experiences aside. And honestly, a lot of people develop something called anhedonia, where we don't even find joy in new experiences anymore unless we're under the influence of that substance, because we've set such a threshold for that dopamine release and some of those other neurotransmitters. Reason number 3 why people consume cannabis: to escape, to deal with stress, and to relax, okay? I think one of my first questions to people when we talk about this is, what is your obsession with wanting to relax or to hit that off switch? I know for me personally, and a lot of people that our programs have appealed to over the years, they tend to feel worse when they're relaxing the most, unless it's like a planned level of leisure, like a vacation or something like that. But what is this obsession with relaxing that society has? I just have to relax. I just got to take a break. I just got to do this. Well, I know for me personally, it's when I'm relaxing is when I used to lean into the most destructive behaviors: overspending, overeating, overconsumption of TV or media content, right? Or just plain old substance abuse, weed, nicotine, alcohol. This is largely how society views relaxing. And I don't know. It's just, I think you really have to ask, what is your obsession with wanting to relax? 2, is cannabis actually helping you deal with the stress? If you're smoking because of work stress, what needs to be done is the completion of the tasks in a more efficient manner, right? Or at a faster rate. Taking action, the opposite of procrastinating, is what alleviates work stress for most people, okay? So if smoking weed is to alleviate stress, but it's leading to, let's say, maybe procrastination on the things that actually need to be done that would actually start to chip away at the stress, then here we are again, where weed is actually compounding to the problems versus helping aid in resolution of the problems. And then, does that procrastination make you more relaxed or less relaxed? I know for me, the more things build up in my head, the more stressed I become. Then I would consume substances to escape those emotions or feelings or thoughts or whatever you want to call them. And they would just wound up compounding more and more and more. And as the problems compounded more and more and more, then my tolerance for weed went up more and more and more, because I would smoke more and more and more, which you can see the cycle then that this puts a person into. Reason number 4, relief from anxiety and depression. A simple question I ask people: okay, you're smoking weed for anxiety and depression. Are you less depressed and less anxious? Has there been any change in the circumstances that are resulting in the anxiety and depression for you? Has weed helped change those circumstances? And as a disclaimer, for some people watching this, the answer may be yes. Okay, that's okay. But we're kind of playing devil's advocate here because this channel is dedicated to helping people quit, right? So going back to that, you've been smoking weed for 4 years, 5 years, 20 years, 3 decades, whatever. Are you less stressed? Are you less depressed? Because To give you an example, if someone's working with us one-on-one, or they're going through our coaching sessions, or they're using our supplement products, and they're not feeling less cravings, less withdrawal symptoms, their mindset isn't changing after doing one-on-one coaching, I'll be the first to tell that person, this is not working for you. So is cannabis, is weed consumption actually working for you? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Am I less stressed? Am I less anxious? And a lot of anxiety and depression is related to situational circumstances. Have those situational circumstances changed for the better or worse with increased cannabis consumption over the years? Are you actually getting relief from the anxiety or depression? And then to further compound that, has the consequences of addiction changed your circumstances in such a way that it's added to the depression and the anxiety? Are those now side effects of addiction? That's what we have to ask ourselves. Number 5, recreationally and for having fun. This is another reason why people consume cannabis. Really simple. If you consume cannabis recreationally, the question becomes, are there other things that you can find enjoyment in that don't involve cannabis consumption? And for a lot of people, when they first quit, the answer seems to be no. Nothing seems enjoyable. Nothing seems fun anymore. And this is pretty normal when you first quit a substance, because you get that kind of dopamine deficit. And if you're in the process of quitting, it means you've probably entered a place of addiction, which already has a dopamine deficit. So things just seem less enjoyable, less motivated to do, less fun. Typically, this resolves when you practice doing those things sober again over a period of time. 30 days, 90 days, 6 months, something like that. And again, for everyone, that time frame is going to look different. But simple. If you smoke weed recreationally, are there things that you can do that don't involve smoking weed socially and recreationally that you can eventually find enjoyment in? For most people, the answer is going to be yes. For a lot of people who struggle with addiction, though, that thought process of doing something not involving weed feels extremely overwhelming and just too much to take on. So they remain stuck in what I call like a ridiculously comfortable yet uncomfortable comfort zone. They remain stuck there, and it's a sad thing. Reason number 6. Ooh, this is a good one. Boredom. This is a common one that I hear from people. I smoke weed because I'm bored. Are you bored, or does cannabis make you content with being bored? Maybe you are a boring person. It's possible. Maybe not. Maybe smoking weed really does enhance the hike. It does enhance your creativity. It does enhance all those things. That's fine if that's you. Again, remember, we're talking about addiction and people who are struggling with addiction in regard to cannabis consumption, okay? So if it really is enhancing your time, by all means, keep smoking. But if you're constantly bored and you're smoking constantly, has weed made you content with being bored? And have you become a boring person? I don't know that anything can cure boredom but yourself and the actions and the things that you do day to day, right? So when I quit weed, I was like, oh, my life is somewhat boring. Despite having a business, despite, trying to get into relationships, I didn't have a lot of things going on because my interests were so consumed by substance use, okay? So just something to think about. Lastly, do you smoke weed to avoid withdrawals? So some people will say, well, the only reason I smoke is because I'm addicted, and when I quit, I get withdrawal symptoms. If that's the case, I'd ask you, have you ever quit before in the past, gotten through the withdrawals, and then returned to cannabis consumption? Because if that's what happened, you quit, you got through the withdrawals, but then 3 months later, you went back to it, well, then I would say you're lying to yourself. It wasn't just because of the withdrawals and the addiction. Some other reason brought you back, and hopefully we identified it earlier in today's video. Now, if it's truly because of the withdrawal symptoms, there's many options. You can taper off of the substance, which may lessen it a bit. You can go to a medical detox, not a rehab, a medical detox, and you can get potentially medication-assisted detox, or just, there's more holistic approaches to detox that you can use. You can try supplements, okay? Or you can just just power through it, right? In most cases outside of CHS, Cannabinoid Hyperemesis Syndrome, where we can see severe dehydration that can lead to kidney failure and death, in most cases, quitting cannabis is a safe thing. The only other time where it becomes a problem is in cases of extreme suicidal ideation or psychosis or psychotic behaviors that may have resulted during addiction. And then when a person comes off, it's just they need to be monitored sometimes. So that's just, and lastly, on the note of withdrawals, so that's an easy thing. If withdrawals are the only reason you smoke, there's eventually an end to the withdrawals. You're going to get through them. Two, you already experience withdrawals every day that you continue to smoke, right? You smoke, you sleep at night. The drug starts to exit your body in between periods of use. You start to get cravings, irritability, headache, stomach problems, and then you smoke again to anxiety, depression. Then you smoke again to alleviate all of those withdrawal symptoms. And then here we are again saying, I can't quit because of the withdrawals. At least the drug prevented me from going through that process. When in reality, the drug is keeping you stuck in a daily process of withdrawal, day in and day out, okay? So if these things make sense to you, this is a lot of what we break down in our one-on-one coaching, but we kind of tailor it specific to that person's situation. So you can learn more about that in the pinned comment or the video description. Or check out our Kick It Crave Less supplement line. Helps to reduce cravings. It can help with sleep. It can help with recovery. You can read about the ingredients on the kickitrevolution.com website and see if it's a good fit for you. All right, guys, until next time.